Welcome back to the finale of the Cedar Fair chain bracket, featuring a complete lineup battle of the number 1 seed Cedar Point and number 4 seed Kings Island. If you missed any of the 3 previous parts, we whittled it down from every other Cedar Fair park, so go check out the opening rounds. So let's start the Battle of Ohio. Now, unlike the first 3 rounds, I've tried to match up every ride as possible. Not every ride is set up model to model, but it's more of a mix of model to model and place and their respective lineups. So Cedar Point has 2 extra coasters that will also be accounted for. Now, starting off, we have the family coasters. Both parks have a Woodstock Express. Cedar Point is a Vekoma Junior coaster, and Kings Island is a PTC Mini wooden coaster, and the comfort of the Vekoma makes it a little bit better here. Both parks also have kiddie coasters that are just going to be a wash, and the more fun options for families are probably Iron Dragon and Flying Ace Aerial Chase. We have an Arrow Suspended and Vekoma Junior Suspended coasters respectively. Both rides are incredibly mild, but I think the gimmick of Iron Dragon swinging makes it a little bit better here. So after the first 3 matchups, Cedar Point is up 2-0. Now, taking a small step up in the thrill department, we have Blue Streak, the oldest coaster at the point, and Backlot Sun Coaster, Kings Island's family launch coaster. Now, I'm a huge fan of these small-scale launch coasters that pack a punch, and they're really entertaining if you get the effects especially. Blue Streak is a fine, old-school wooden coaster to start the kids on, but it's a little bit too simple here. Score moves 2-1. Moving ahead, we have the Mine Train rides, Cedar Creek Mine Ride and Adventure Express. This is a pretty easy choice for me, as Adventure Express is the more exciting, albeit a little bit rougher, but better themed experience. Top to bottom, it's the ride I want to ride more. 2-2, tied up. Then we have the Dueling coasters, Gemini and Racer. Now, Gemini is an Arrow hybrid that opened at the world's tallest, and it surprised me at how smooth it ran and has some fun moments here and there. Racer is also a historically impactful ride, and with the recent track work running pretty beautifully. This may be my first kind of controversial pick here, but I'm actually going to go with Racer here because it kind of duels more often it seemed, at least in my experience, and that adds a lot to the ride, even if Gemini is a slightly more thrilling experience. 3-2, Kings Island leads. Now, taking up another step in the thrill, we look at Corkscrew and Vertigo. We have the old school Arrow that kicked off Cedar Point inversions, and the now rare inverted Vekoma Boomerang at Kings Island. Corkscrew is as rough as a coaster of that size can be, and it really doesn't do much here except for the inversions, and Vertigo is radly in its own right and has awful old-fashioned Vekoma restraints, but it's just more intense and fun top to bottom. Kings Island is up 4-2. Now, here seems like a good spot to bring in the 2 Cedar Point rides without matchups here. It's going to be Dragster and Rougarou. The Intimate Strata and B&M Floorless are unique in this matchup, and normally Dragster would get 2 points here, but because of the standing but not operating status, it's simply going to tie the matchup 1 point each, 4-4. Moving on, we will have Gatekeeper versus the Bat, a bit of an odd matchup, the B&M Wing versus Kings Island Arrow Suspended Coaster. Now, the Bat is much more thrilling than Iron Dragon, I felt it fits better in this matchup against a major ride. Now, the swinging is more out of control, and in some spots it really leaves you laughing, but Gatekeeper is a long and graceful looper that is as re-rideable as they come, and it doesn't have that mind-numbingly slow lift hill or short ride experience like the Bat. 5-4, Cedar Point leads. Next up, we have the old school, rougher record breakers, Magnum Xl 200 and the Beast. While Kings Island has a hyper of their own, this matchup is set for the rides that are going to hurt a bit and define their generation of coaster. Magnum is going to try to break your back with airtime, and the Beast is going to try to snap your neck through some weird transitions. Now, this is probably my most controversial opinion, but I am riding the Beast here. More of a bump you around than actual pain. The Out Into the Woods ride is simply more fun for me, but I know there are tons of fans that are going to have Magnum higher here, but for me, the score ties up at 5. Now, the B&M matchups are upcoming, starting with Val Raven and Diamondback. A bit of the leftovers here, both are meant to be graceful airtime-centered rides that are centerpieces in their respective parks. A modern dive and hyper make for an interesting thought for a little while, but in reality, Diamondback is just the better ride. The roughness needs to be mentioned here, but only briefly. 6-5, Kings Island. Now, speaking of B&M, we have the Inverts. Raptor and Banshee. Both are large-scale inverts, with Banshee having the edge in height, length, speed, and inversions. Now, the vest restraints are debated topics, but I don't think they really bother me that much. Same with the old-school B&M mode shoulder restraints that have a little bit more headbanging, but are a bit freer. Now, this comes down to the rattle of Banshee and if Raptor does enough. Unfortunately for me, Raptor disappointed me. It was a bit of a forgettable ride, and Banshee, on the other hand, is as intense as they come. even if it's a little rougher. Well, a lot rougher, but still, takes the point, 7-5. Now we have the final three moving in, starting with the launch coasters, Maverick and Flight of Fear. Now, Flight of Fear is an indoor premier launch coaster featuring inversions and a great theming experience that I consider to be pretty underrated. Maverick is simply another class of coaster, however. It has an elite layout complete with airtime intensity and one of the better launches around that simply is over the top better than Flight of Fear. This ride would probably be the best ride in 90% of the parks in the country, and it brings the score to 7-6. Then we have the Gigas, Millennium Force and Orion, the first and the newest to be built. Now, Intimate Stake is a bit more about speed and experience, while Orion is all about keeping riders floating up out of their seat. While Orion is a bit short on track length, Millennium Force is a drawn-out ride that keeps chugging, but does lack in the airtime department. Personally, after riding both, Millennium Force is definitely my preference here because it stands out as a more unique ride experience, but both are great rides, but it's Millennium Force here, tied at 7 apiece. Now, it comes down to the top rides in each park, Steel Vengeance and Mystic Timbers, two of the best airtime-based coasters in the world. Mystic is an elite wooden coaster by GCI with an out-and-back layout. As I stated in the previous rounds, it keeps riders guessing with sharp pops of airtime and hits the brakes hard by keeping speed. The woods make for an incredible night ride, and the shed is a cool little ending as long as it's not too hot and you're not sitting out there too long. This comes in at number 7 overall on my entire list, which would be good enough for 4th best in the whole bracket. Now, unfortunately, Steel Vengeance is number 1 on both those lists. The Hyper Hybrid RMC doubles up on that airtime, making it sharp, sustained, and near endless with a longer ride experience. The lakeside view even makes for at least a matching environment, plus the inversions add a whole extra feeling that a GCI just doesn't have. Cedar Point runs the table and wins the bracket as the 1 seed. So this is going to wrap up that multi-part series. Let me know if there's any matchups here or in previous rounds that you disagree on. And until next week, that's all from the shores of Island Coasters.